I didn't plan on spending the night in a car with a stranger. I didn't even plan on talking to him for more than 5 minutes. But somewhere between mile marker 214 and a broken down bus on a dark stretch of highway, I made a decision that would quietly mess with everything I thought I knew about myself. It started with rain, the kind that comes down suddenly, heavy and loud, blurring the road and forcing everyone to slow to a crawl. I was driving back from a work trip, exhausted, irritated, and counting the minutes until I could collapse into my own bed. My phone buzzed with another notification I didn't bother to read. I just wanted the night to be over. Then I saw him, a guy standing on the shoulder of the road, hood up, backpack at his feet, one hand raised half-heartedly, like he already knew no one was going to stop. His car was pulled over at a bad angle, hazard lights blinking weakly through the rain. I don't stop for people. I've always told myself it's about safety, common sense, not being stupid. But the truth is, I avoid situations I can't control. People I don't know. Moments that might ask something of me I'm not ready to give. I passed him, then slowed. I don't know why. Guilt, maybe. Or curiosity. Or the way he didn't look desperate. Just tired. Like someone who'd already accepted that tonight wasn't going according to plan. I pulled over about 50 feet ahead of him and sat there for a second, hands tight on the steering wheel, rain drumming against the roof. I muttered, "You're an idiot, Joshua," under my breath, then put the car in park and got out. Up close, he looked about my age, mid to late 20s. Tall, broad shoulders under a soaked jacket. When he turned toward me, I noticed his eyes first, light, alert, a little guarded. "Car trouble?" I asked, raising my voice over the rain. He let out a dry laugh. "That obvious, huh?" His voice was calm, warm, not what I expected. "Engine died about 10 minutes ago," he said. "No signal. Tow truck said at least 2 hours." I glanced at the empty road behind us, then at the sky, then back at him. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "North," he said. "Honestly, anywhere with lights and coffee at this point." There was a pause, the kind where both of us knew what was coming next. "I'm Joshua," I said before I could overthink it. "I'm heading that way too. If you want to ride to the next town." He studied me for a second. Not suspicious, just careful. Then he nodded once. "Ryan," he said. "And yeah, I'd appreciate that." We loaded his backpack into the back seat, and when he climbed in beside me, the car suddenly felt smaller. Warmer. Too quiet. We drove for a few minutes without talking, windshield wipers working overtime. I told myself I was just being polite, that this was nothing. Just a favor, but I was already aware of him in a way I didn't usually notice people. The way he sat relaxed but alert. The faint smell of rain and something clean, like soap. The way his knee brushed mine when the car hit a pothole and neither of us moved away right away. "So," he said eventually, glancing over with a small smile, "you pick up strangers often, or am I special?" I snorted. "Definitely not often." "Good," he said. "I'd hate to feel replaceable." Something about that landed differently than it should have. We talked. About stupid things at first. Music, bad road trips, the universal hatred of rest stop bathrooms. Ryan had an easy way of speaking, like he wasn't trying to impress me, just present, honest. And I found myself answering him more openly than I usually did with people I'd known for years. At one point he looked at me and said, "You seem like someone who's always thinking 3 steps ahead." I frowned. "That obvious?" "Kind of," he said gently. "You drive like you're expecting something to go wrong." I laughed it off, but my chest tightened because he wasn't wrong. By the time we reached the next town, it was past midnight. Rain still falling. Most places closed. One motel glowing at the edge of the highway like a bad decision. Ryan looked at it, then at me. "Well," he said, Looks like I'm not going anywhere tonight. Neither, apparently, was, I should have dropped him off. That was the sensible option. Get him a coffee, wait with him until the tow truck came, then drive home and forget the whole thing. That's how these moments are supposed to go. Brief, forgettable, safe. Instead, we sat in the car outside the motel, engine idling, rain still streaking down the windshield. Ryan leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. I don't think they're fixing my car tonight. Yeah, I said. Doesn't look like it. Another pause, thicker this time. There's a diner down the road, I added, a little too quickly. Open 24 hours. You could wait there. He nodded, but didn't reach for the door handle. You don't have to babysit me, you know. I know, I said. I stopped myself. Just what? Didn't want to leave him alone? Didn't want the night to end? Didn't want to go back to being alone with my thoughts? Ryan glanced at me, something unreadable flickering across his face. You look like you're arguing with yourself. Bad habit, I said. He smiled at that, not teasing, understanding. We ended up checking in. I told myself it was practical. 1 room, 2 beds, sleep for a few hours. Then I'd drive him back in the morning once his car was sorted. No drama. No weirdness. The woman at the front desk didn't even blink when she handed me the key, just slid it across the counter and said, Room 12. Ice machine's broken. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet. Beige walls. A flickering lamp. Exactly what you'd expect from a highway motel that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. Ryan tossed his backpack onto one bed and shrugged out of his jacket. His shirt clung to him slightly from the rain, darkened at the shoulders. I caught myself staring and immediately looked away, annoyed with myself. You good? He asked. Yeah, I said. Just tired. That wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. We changed in silence, both of us pointedly facing away from each other. I lay down on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of traffic outside and the soft rustle of Ryan moving around the room. Joshua? He said quietly. Yeah? Can I ask you something? And you can tell me to shut up if it's too personal. I hesitated. Okay. Why'd you stop? He asked, back on the road. I laughed softly. That's what you want to ask? Yeah, he said, because most people don't. I thought about it for a moment. The real answer sat heavy in my chest. Honestly? I said. Because I recognize that look on your face. What look? The one where you're trying not to ask for help. There was a long silence. When I turned my head, Ryan was lying on his side, facing me, propped up on one elbow. He didn't look surprised. Just seen. Yeah, he said finally. That tracks. We talked then. Really talked about where he was coming from. A breakup that hadn't been dramatic. Just slow and hollowing. A job he was good at but didn't care about. The feeling of drifting through your own life like a guest. I found myself answering him just as honestly, about how I'd built my life around being in control. How I avoided risks, avoided attachment, avoided anything that might knock me off balance. How I told myself it was maturity, when really it was fear. At some point, the space between our beds felt smaller. Not physically. Something else. You ever feel like you're watching your life happen instead of actually living it? Ryan asked quietly. The question hit harder than I expected. Yeah, I said. All the time. He nodded, eyes steady on mine. Me too. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Like we both knew something had shifted, but neither of us wanted to be the first to name it. Then Ryan chuckled softly. This is probably the weirdest night I've had in a while. I smiled despite myself. Same. Stranger on the road. Motel room. Existential confessions. Classic, I said. Our laughter faded, leaving something softer behind. I was suddenly very aware of how close he felt, even from across the room. Of how easy it would be to cross that invisible line. Of how badly I wanted to, and how much that scared me. Joshua, Ryan said again, more quietly this time. Yeah? I don't regret tonight. Neither did I, and that realization that I wasn't already planning my escape was the first crack in the version of myself I thought I knew. I didn't sleep right away. Neither did Ryan. I could tell by the way the room stayed quiet but not settled, like both of us were lying there listening to the same thought circle. The motel curtains didn't quite close all the way, letting a thin strip of neon light spill across the floor. Every time a car passed, headlights swept briefly over the ceiling. I turned onto my side, facing away from him, then back again. Finally, I gave up. "You awake?" I asked. "Yeah," Ryan said instantly. "Was hoping you'd say something." That made my chest tighten in a way that felt dangerously close to relief. We sat up at the same time, backs against our respective headboards. There was still distance between us, but it felt thinner now, like a suggestion instead of a boundary. "This is usually the part where one of us makes a bad joke," he said. "I already used my quota for the night," I replied. He smiled, softer than before, less guarded. "Can I be honest?" he asked. I nodded. "I don't usually open up like that," he said. "Especially not to someone I met a few hours ago." "Me neither," I admitted. "I usually keep things surface level." "I noticed." I laughed quietly. "Of course you did." He hesitated, then said, "But tonight felt different." There it was again. That sense that we were circling something obvious, both pretending we didn't see it. "I think," he continued, choosing his words carefully, "that when you spend all your time holding yourself together, it's weirdly comforting to sit with someone who isn't asking you to perform." That landed straight in my chest. I looked at him then, really looked. The tired lines around his eyes, the way his confidence wasn't loud, just steady. The way he seemed completely present, like he wasn't thinking about how this would look later or what it meant long term. He was just, "Ryan," I said slowly, "I don't usually do things without knowing where they're going." He nodded. "I figured. And I don't usually let people see me like this," I added. "Unplanned. Off script." "Yeah," he said quietly. "I figured that too." Silence stretched between us again, but this time it felt intentional. "I'm not asking for anything," he said finally. "Not expectations. Not promises. He stopped, exhaled. "I just don't want to pretend this night didn't matter." I swallowed because that was exactly what I'd been planning to do. I swung my legs off the bed before my brain could catch up. Ryan watched me, expression unreadable but calm. When I stood in front of him, close enough now that I could feel his presence, my heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I don't know what this means," I said. "That's okay," he replied. "I don't need it to mean anything more than it already does." The honesty in that undid me. I sat down on the edge of his bed, not touching, not yet, just close enough that the space between us buzzed. "Can I?" he started. "Yes," I said before he could finish. That made him smile, just a little. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. His hand brushed mine, tentative at first, like he was checking whether this was real. When I didn't move, he let his fingers lace with mine. The contact was simple, almost innocent. And somehow that made it hit harder. I'd kissed men before. I'd been intimate. This wasn't new territory. But this felt different. When he leaned in, he didn't rush it. Our foreheads touched first. I could feel his breath, warm and steady. I realized I wasn't tense. I wasn't bracing for anything. I wasn't trying to control the moment. I was just there. The kiss was soft, unhurried. No urgency, no pressure, just confirmation. When we pulled back, neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. We lay down side by side after that, not tangled, not dramatic, just close. His arm rested lightly across my chest, like a question he wasn't forcing me to answer. I stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing even out as sleep finally took him. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to plan my exit. That scared me. But it also felt honest. Morning came quietly. No dramatic wake-up, no sudden regret, just pale light creeping through the thin curtains and the distant sound of a truck engine starting somewhere outside. I woke first. Ryan was still asleep beside me, his arm heavier now, resting fully across my chest. His face was relaxed in a way that surprised me, unguarded, like he wasn't bracing for the world yet. I lay there longer than I needed to. This was usually the moment when my instincts kicked in, when I'd carefully untangle myself, gather my things, and leave before anything complicated had a chance to form. I was good at clean exits, at leaving things neat and unresolved, but my body didn't move. Instead, I noticed stupid details, the way his hair fell into his eyes, the faint crease between his brows, the warmth where we touched, steady and real. When he finally stirred, it wasn't abrupt, just a slow inhale, a shift of his shoulder. His eyes opened and met mine almost immediately. "Oh," he murmured. Hey, I replied. For a split second, I wondered if the awkwardness would rush in now that daylight had stripped the night of its softness. If he'd pull away, if I would. Neither of us did. He glanced down at his arm across me, then back up, silently asking a question. I shook my head. "You're fine." He smiled, not relieved, just content. "Guess I didn't dream it," he said lightly. I snorted. "If you did, we've both got issues." We lay there for a bit, talking about nothing. How terrible motel coffee usually was. Whether his car would actually start once it was fixed. Whether rain made road trips better or worse. Normal conversation. Grounding. Almost domestic in a way that caught me off guard. Eventually, reality nudged its way back in. "I should get going soon," I said. "I've got a long drive." "Yeah," he said. "Tow truck should be here in an hour or so." There it was. The unspoken ending. I braced myself for the familiar tightening in my chest, the urge to compartmentalize the night into something small and manageable. Instead, I felt sad, not devastating, world-ending sad. Just a quiet disappointment that something unexpectedly meaningful had a built-in expiration date. Ryan seemed to sense it. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. "Listen," he said, more serious now. "I don't want to make this weird." "Too late," I joked weakly. He smiled, then softened. "I'm not asking for anything you don't want to give. He hesitated. "I'd like to not lose this entirely." I studied him, the sincerity in his voice, the lack of pressure. Most people either demanded more or pretended they wanted nothing at all. Ryan stood somewhere braver. "I don't usually do this," I said again, like it was a reflex. "I know," he replied gently. "You've mentioned that." I exhaled, then reached for my phone on the nightstand, held it out to him. "One night," I said. "No expectations, no promises, but not erased either." He took the phone, a slow grin spreading across his face as he typed his number in. "Deal," he said. We checked out together, standing side by side at the counter like we'd done this 100 times before. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, sharp, like something reset. His car sat where we'd left it, hood still up, waiting. We stood there for a moment, unsure how to end this properly. "So," he said, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. "Guess this is where we pretend we're chill about it." I stepped forward and kissed him. Quick, simple, deliberate. "Now we are," I said. He laughed, eyes warm. "Drive safe, Joshua." "You too, Ryan." I walked back to my car, heart heavier than expected, but not in a bad way. As I pulled onto the road, my phone buzzed. Ryan, one night, still thinking about it. I smiled, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to talk myself out of something real, and that changed more than the night ever could. The drive home felt different. Same road, same playlists, same familiar rhythm of highway lines sliding past my windshield. But something inside me had shifted just enough that I couldn't ignore it. I kept replaying small moments instead of the obvious ones. The way Ryan listened without interrupting. The fact that he never once tried to define what we were. How natural it felt to just be there with him. That unsettled me more than any dramatic encounter ever had. I told myself it was just a good night. A fluke, one of those moments that feels bigger in hindsight than it really is. I'd had those before. They faded. Life moved on. Except this one didn't fade. Ryan texted me, Later that afternoon, Ryan, cars fixed. Tao guy was an asshole, but I survived. Me, glad to hear it. Ryan, you home safe? Me, yeah, just got in. There was a pause, long enough that I assumed the conversation would end there. Then, Ryan, weird question. But did you feel it too? Like something clicked? I stared at the message longer than I needed to. My instinct was to deflect. Joke. Say something vague that kept things safe and undefined. That's what I always did. Kept one foot out the door so I could claim it never mattered that much. But the truth was already uncomfortable enough that lying about it felt pointless. Me. Yeah, I did. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Ryan. Okay, good. I didn't want to be the only one. We didn't text constantly after that. No all day back and forth. No sudden intensity. Just check-ins. Casual messages. Photos of bad coffee. A sarcastic comment about traffic. Small things that quietly became something I looked forward to. A week passed. Then, 2. And instead of fading, the feeling settled in. One night, after a long day at work, I found myself rereading our messages, trying to pinpoint what exactly had changed in me. It wasn't that I suddenly wanted a relationship, or that I decided Ryan was the one. It was simpler and scarier than that. I wasn't hiding. Not from him. Not from myself. I hadn't told anyone about that night. Not because I was ashamed, but because it felt personal in a way I wasn't used to sharing. Like naming it too soon might flatten it into something ordinary. Ryan seemed to get that. When he finally suggested meeting up again, it wasn't dramatic. Ryan, I'll be passing through your city next weekend. No pressure. Just figured I'd say it out loud. I stared at the message, heart picking up speed. Old me would have found a reason not to. Scheduling conflict. Long week. Maybe another time. Instead, I typed, me, yeah, I'd like that. When we met again, it wasn't like the movies. No slow motion reunion. No instant pull. Just a hug that lasted a beat longer than necessary. Coffee. Conversation. Laughter that came easily. And underneath it all, the quiet understanding that whatever this was, it didn't need to be rushed or run from. Later that night, sitting across from him at a bar, Ryan tilted his head and said, "You seem different." I raised an eyebrow. Different how? Lighter, he said, like you're not bracing for impact. I thought about that, about how one unplanned night on a dark road had cracked something open in me, not because of romance or grand gestures, but because I'd let myself stay. I said slowly, I finally stopped assuming I need an exit strategy for everything. Ryan smiled at that. Not triumphant, not relieved, just proud. And for the first time, I realized the night with a stranger hadn't changed how I saw him. It changed how I saw myself. I didn't tell Ryan this at the time, but seeing him again scared me more than that first night ever did. Not because of him, because of how easily I'd let him back in. We fell into a rhythm that felt natural in a way I wasn't used to trusting. He'd come through my city every few weeks for work, and sometimes we'd meet for dinner or a walk. Sometimes we wouldn't. There was no scoreboard, no constant checking in, just an understanding that when we showed up, we were actually there. One night, a couple of months after the motel, he stayed over at my place for the first time. No dramatic buildup. No awkward negotiations. We ordered takeout, ate on the couch, argued lightly about which movie to watch. When we eventually ended up in bed, it wasn't rushed or urgent. It felt familiar already, like we'd skipped the part where you pretend not to care. Afterward, we lay there in the dark, the city humming faintly through the window. Ryan traced idle patterns on my arm. You ever notice, he said, how some people feel temporary even when they promise they won't be? Yeah, I replied. Most of them. And then there are people who feel steady, he continued. Even when you don't know how long they'll be around. I turned onto my side to face him. You saying I feel steady? He smiled. I'm saying you surprised me. That stuck with me. Because for most of my life, I'd built my identity around being predictable. Responsible. The guy who didn't take emotional risks he couldn't calculate. Ryan didn't disrupt my life. He revealed the parts of it I'd been ignoring. A few weeks later, I caught myself doing something unfamiliar, thinking ahead. Not planning exits, not bracing for disappointment, but actually imagining what it might look like if this didn't end tomorrow. That's when the old instincts flared up. I pulled back a little. Took longer to reply. Kept conversations lighter. Ryan noticed, of course. He always did. You don't have to disappear when things get real, he said one night, not accusing, just stating a fact. I rubbed the back of my neck. I'm not disappearing. You're hovering, he replied. Big difference. I laughed despite myself. I'm still figuring this out. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to be different overnight. I just want you to be honest when you're scared. That hit harder than any argument would have, because he wasn't asking me to change for him. He was asking me to stop hiding from myself. It took me a while to answer. Then I said, I'm scared that if I let this be real, I won't know who I am without the walls. Ryan looked at me for a long moment, then reached for my hand. Maybe, he said quietly, you'll like that version of yourself more. I didn't respond right away, but later that night, lying alone in my bed, I realized something that felt both terrifying and grounding. That stranger on the side of the road hadn't just shared a night with me. He'd quietly given me permission to stop performing my own life. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. The moment that changed everything, no ultimatum, no late-night confession in the rain. It happened on a regular Tuesday. I was standing in my kitchen, half listening to Ryan talk on speakerphone while I washed a mug, when he casually said, I might take a job closer to you. My hand froze. For how long? I asked, keeping my voice neutral out of pure habit. Don't know, he said. Could be a year, could be more, could be temporary. Temporary. That word used to calm me. A built-in expiration date. A safety net. This time, it did the opposite. And? I asked, and I realized I was thinking about what my life would look like if you were actually in it, he said. Not as a stop along the way. Just there. I turned the faucet off. I'm not asking you for anything, he added quickly. I just wanted to be honest. There it was again. That steady presence. No pressure. No performance. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, because the truth was unavoidable now. I wasn't afraid of losing Ryan. I was afraid of choosing him. Choosing meant intention. Responsibility. Letting go of the excuse that things just happened to me. That night, I invited him over. When he arrived, he looked like he always did. Comfortable, open, unguarded. The kind of person I used to assume would eventually disappoint me if I leaned in too hard. We sat on the couch, knees touching. I've been thinking about that night, I said. On the road. Me too, he replied. I think that was the first time I didn't try to control the outcome, I continued. I didn't plan it. I didn't define it. I just stayed. Ryan watched me closely. And I don't want to go back to the version of myself that always kept one foot out the door. The words felt heavy. Real. Scary. He didn't smile. He didn't reach for me. He waited. So, he said softly, what do you want now? I took a breath. I want to try, I said. Not perfectly. Not with guarantees. Just, honestly, that's when he smiled. Not because he'd won something, but because I had. We didn't label anything that night. We didn't need to. We went to bed together, not chasing a feeling, not pretending this was just another moment. Weeks turned into months. Ryan took the job. He moved closer. And sometimes, when we drove late at night, passing long stretches of empty road, I'd glance over at him and think about how close I came to driving past that broken-down car. One decision, one pause. One night, it didn't turn my life upside down. It did something quieter. It taught me that connection doesn't demand certainty, just presence, and that the most important relationship I changed that night was the one I had with myself.